Good day, everyone. Today, I will be presenting Chapter 1 of Rochelle Leiber's Morphology and Lexical Semantics titled Features in Morphology and Lexical Semantics. This chapter explores how morphemes combine to create meanings in complex words, focusing on affixes like and e. We will dive into semantic features, affixal polysemy, mismatches between form and meaning, and more. So let's get started. So let us first define the two most important terms from the title of chapter 1. So the first word is morphology. Now we all know that morphology is the study of word formation, while the second word or term is lexical semantics. So lexical semantics focuses on word meaning. Now I'd like to inform everyone that this chapter bridges these two fields, okay, morphology and lexical semantics, by asking the question, how do morphemes, how do morphemes like prefixes and suffixes combine to create complex word meaning? There, that's our focus. How morphemes combine to form complex word meaning. Now, Leiber points out that morphology or generative morphology has traditionally focused on, just the structure or the phonological aspects and neglecting the semantics of word formation. Okay, that's according to Leiber. Now, this chapter aims to fill that gap by addressing key questions about affix meanings. And so, the main problem that was stated in the introduction is that there is a lack of systematic frameworks for studying the meaning of the affixes or affix semantics. So, in the later pages of this chapter, Leiber introduced frameworks, okay, to help us understand the meaning really of affixes. Okay, so one major problem in morphological semantics is, according to Leiber, is um, understanding affix meanings. Again, one major problem in morphological semantics is understanding affix meanings. Okay, so we have, for example, the affixes that I mentioned in the introduction. We have the affixes er and e, which exhibit polysemy. Okay, when we say polysemy, it means multiple meanings. Okay, so for example, let's take a look at the affix first. So, I mean the suffix rather, the suffix So the suffix can mean many things, right? So it can mean an agent, which in our example here is a writer. So it can also mean as an instrument, so opener, a patient, loaner, or an object, which is two-sitter, right? So another affix that we have is E, okay? So E often implies a recipient or a patient role. For example, we can think of examples such as employee or payee, okay? Now, the challenge, according to Leiber, that we need to determine is that if there is a common thread connecting all these meanings. Okay, is there a common thread or is there a core meaning of these affixes? Do these affixes have a core meaning? If so, what is it? No, what do you think? Do these affixes have a core meaning? If so, what is it? Okay, so as we go on through our discussion, we will find out the question to that answer. Okay, now Leiber introduces two there are two key semantic features that help explain the meanings of affixes. Again, we will find out, okay, again, the problem is that we want to find out if there is a core meaning, okay, of these affixes. Now, in order for us to find out if there is a core meaning, Leiber introduced these two key semantic features to help explain the affix meaning. So, the first key feature, according to Leiber, is material, which refers to physical entities or objects. Okay, so what examples can you think of? Okay, so for example, a table, right? A car, or it can also be a book, right? So that's the first. Again, please take note the first key semantic feature is material. Now, the second semantic feature is called dynamic. So dynamic is accordingly associated with actions, process, or events. Okay, this is totally different from materials. So examples of dynamic are, you can say running, right? Eating, and even thinking. Okay, so again, let's go back. Material are all entities with physical substance, whereas dynamic represent actions, processes, or events that involve change over time. Now, according to Leiber, if we know the semantic features, okay, these can help us categorize types of concepts more systematically. Okay. Now, from that two key semantic features, using material and dynamic, Leiber identifies three major ontological classes. Okay, so ontological pertains to things, okay, or categories of things. Now, the first class is what we call entities. Again, the first ontological class is called entities. So from the word itself, of course, it refers to physical objects. Okay, we go back to our example, car or a bus. Next is event. Okay, so actions or processes, for example, writing, opening, okay, running, eating, reading, and so on. And the third one is what we call state. Okay, so or the conditions or positions. So example given is being loaned. These classes are foundational for understanding how morphemes interact with bases to form word meanings. Again, these classes are foundational. Okay, if we know about these classes, so we can find out the interaction between the base word and the morpheme. Okay, and if they're combined, this they produce word meaning, right? Okay. Now, okay, so let's consider how these ontological classes play out in different word formation. So, in the examples for entities, can you identify which words are the entities? Okay, so we can say that dog and truck are entities. No, bed as well. Okay, how about in the events? For events, rather. So rise and fall are events. How about for states? Okay, these two words such as happiness and sadness describe condition. Okay, next. There. So for a more specific view, okay, so let's take a look at entities first. So we have the example words such as dog bed and truck driver. So what they show accordingly, these are nouns combined to show users, roles, or functions. Next, for events, such as the words sunrise and waterfall, accordingly, these are verbs or actions form part of compounds to describe events or natural processes. And then the states, which we have the words happiness and sadness. So they show adjectives plus the suffixes, right? Adjectives such as happy, the word happy and sad combined with the suffix ness, and then they form abstract nouns to name conditions. Okay, again, please take note about these three ontological classes. Entities, okay, so objects, events, and then state. Okay, so certain affixes actually infer eventual positions or states. So based on their morphemes. Okay, so for example, E. So E is used to show someone in a final or affected position, and it often implies a recipient or patient role. Again, this is different from the affix Okay, so E often implies a recipient or a patient role. So consider employee, right? Someone who is employed, or payee, someone who receives payment. Okay, so these inferred roles highlight how semantic features guide affix meanings. Okay, so let's take a look at a different example now. Okay, beyond E, let's consider other affixes that infer states. So we have able, right? So if that affix will interact to the base wash, it becomes washable. And it is something that can be washed, okay, implying a potential state of being clean. And we also have ed or the ed affix. So tired, meaning someone in a state of being tired. Again, certain affixes such as e infer eventual positions or states based on their base morpheme. Okay, so affixal semantics has a paradigmatic nature. Okay, paradigmatic nature means affixes have a flexible core meaning that adapts depending on their base morpheme. For example, er adds relational meaning but varies by context. Okay, again, adds relational meaning but varies by context. So for example, it can denote an, an agent, writer, an instrument, opener, or even an object, two-seater. Okay, so this flexibility is key to understanding affix polysemy. So more examples of okay, aside from writer, opener, two-seater, which were already mentioned before, we can also use er to demonstrate its flexible nature, right? For example, container, right? Container, such as courier, and then habitant, villager, someone who lives in a village, and then frequency, failure, something that happens daily. see, um, we can see the affix as it demonstrates its flexible nature. It can also be a container, a habitant, a frequency, right? Aside from agent, instrument, um, object, or an object. Okay. So this chapter raises several important questions about affix semantics. Okay, so let's find out. Okay, the first question focuses on polysemy. Okay, so it asks, why do affixes have multiple meanings? Right? For example, the eyes, no, IZE, eyes, affix. It can mean to become, unionize, to go into, so containerize, or even perform, so anthropologize. Do you have an answer to this question? Okay, how about the example right? As what mentioned before, it can also mean an agent, an instrument, a patient. Next, again, I'm presenting to you the questions that are asked in this chapter. So the first question again focuses on polysemy question. It asks, why do affixes have multiple meanings? Okay, and then the second question asks, why do languages have multiple affixes for similar functions? Right? Why do languages have multiple affixes for similar functions? Well, I'd really like to, what's this, gain answers from you. Okay, but for now, I'd like you to think. Okay, and I believe you have answers to these questions because, if I'm not mistaken, this book is published in 2004. And I bet Rochelle Library already have answers to this question, because it's already 2025, and we know more about semantics, okay, morphological semantics. But this one is a good refresher for us, right? So next question. This question focuses on semantic mismatch. Okay, so accordingly, why isn't the correspondence between foreign meaning always one-to-one? For instance, we have empty morphemes. Okay, so in the word longitudinal, the in doesn't have a meaning, right? It's called empty morpheme. Next, we have redundant derivations. For example, the word musicianer, right? The in the musicianer. It can we can already know the meaning of the word musician, right? Without So it's just redundancy, sorry. Next, subtracted meanings. So realistic doesn't actually pertain to being a realist. Okay. I hope you have answers to these questions as well. So again, for empty morphemes, some morphemes seem meaningless, the in the longitudinal, and the redundant derivation. Some words repeat the same meaning unnecessarily. Okay? And then subtracted meaning, sometimes the sense of a morpheme is subtracted from the overall word meaning. Again, realistic doesn't mean pertaining to a realist. So these mismatches challenge traditional views of one-to-one correspondence between form and meaning. All right, so we have additional examples. For the empty morphemes in the word receive, the re doesn't have its usual again meaning. Exactly. And then we also have In semantic subtraction, the word presidential. So presidential doesn't mean pertaining to a president in every sense. It's more about the office. Leiber proposes a systematic framework for understanding affix semantics. All right, so she distinguished um, between number one, a lexical semantic skeleton. Okay, so according to Leiber, it is crucial. It is very important to have an organized semantic features. And then another one is a lexical semantic body, so holistic and context-dependent interpretation. According to Leiber, that this framework helped explain phenomena, okay, like polysemy, redundancy, and mismatches in word formation. Again, we need to consider, okay, this framework. And I bet linguists right now um, already do this, no? But I appreciate how Liber really mentioned this and go through it in detail, because parang it reminds us that, oh yes, okay, we can use this framework in order to know the meanings of affix or to address affix semantics. Again, a semantic skeleton and then a semantic body. So for the skeleton, we need a organized features. Like if you remember material, dynamic, and then we also have entities, events, and states. And then for semantic body, it needs context-dependent interpretation. So let's take a look at the wider implications of this chapter. So the paradigmatic nature of affixal semantics has broader implications for morphology and lexical semantics. So it helps explain why affixes exhibit polysemy. Don't you agree? Weber's framework reveals why affixes like IZE, and exhibit multiple meanings. And then we also have an example for this one, right? Again, we also have example for this one. The eyes can mean a lot of things. To be unionized, containerize, anthropologize, and similar to it can mean an agent, instrument, or patient. It also reveals systematic patterns behind mismatches between form and meaning, right? So it explains why languages often have multiple affixes performing similar functions. You have the example I's and IFY for causative verbs. And then it underscores the importance of semantic features in shaping word formation. Affixes are not rigid. Their meanings adapt flexibly based on context. Exactly. Okay, again, affixes are not rigid. Their meanings adapt flexibly based on context. Okay, sorry. So it also clarifies mismatches. Okay, if we go back, empty morphemes that seem meaningless, and then redundant derivations, words that repeat the same meaning unnecessarily, and then semantic subtraction, cases where a morpheme sense is subtracted from the overall meaning. So we are now down to the conclusion and summary of chapter 1. So again, semantic features like material and dynamic play a crucial role in word formation. Okay, because if we know about these features, then we can identify, okay, or we can form a word with an accurate meaning, no? Whether we like a word that is under material or under dynamic. Next, affix meanings are paradigmatic. They adapt flexibly based on their base morpheme. Okay, again, base morpheme plus, the base and then the morpheme. Next, a systematic framework is essential for analyzing polysemy, redundancy, and mismatches. Again, the two framework that was introduced earlier, it is essential for analyzing polysemy, redundancy, and mismatches. So I would like to end my presentation by um, asking again, okay, the main problem to you. So do you think affixes now have core meaning? If so, what is it? So I hope you answered yes, because affixes like and e do have a core meaning. However, that meaning is abstract and flexible rather than fixed or narrowly defined. And I'd like to acknowledge Raphael Leiber's book, Morphology and Lexical Semantics, as my primary source for this presentation. So thank you very much, and I hope you learned something.